What's the common thread between this photo of Zuckerberg in sandals, this one of Jeff Bezos, and finally this one of Greg Brockman, the co-founder of OpenAI? The answer, I think we can all agree, is bad taste, which is ironic because the newest trend in Silicon Valley is precisely this, taste. Now, is that a joke, you might be wondering? Well, I did the research for you and I'm here to report it is not a joke. After enabling the slobification of everything, the tech elite is now warning us that in this new economy, taste is the currency. Now, taste itself can mean anything, right? I just finished reading a book titled Bad Taste about the reasons why we call some things bad taste and others good taste. Taste is so much more than a personal judgment. At one point in the book, Nathalie Ola describes it as a form of status anxiety. And I thought that perfectly encapsulates the current state of the tech elite, status anxiety. After decades of tech optimism, people and even governments are being forced to reckon with the fact that the tech elite isn't on the side of humanity, quite the contrary.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
Yes?
I don't know. I would.
This is a long hesitation.
The backlash against tech giants and their leaders is unprecedented, and it extends far beyond left-wing critics. Whether it's data centers, involvement in the military, or attacks on users' privacy, people are fed up. But the tech industry is never short on ways to market itself. In the last few months, companies like Palantir and Anthropic have launched their own merch lines, drawing on knowledge maxing and the aesthetics of the Industrial Revolution. The New Yorker called it taste washing, Dazed called it techno-fascist fashion. The idea is to extract the last remaining bits of human creativity and regurgitate it in the form of corporate merch for a cult-like following, or perhaps something more like in the form of a lifestyle brand for the visionaries of the AI world. Now, if this was just about fashion, we could just laugh it off and move on, right? But the reality is that this isn't just about fashion. Whether it's Palantir's merch or Bezos' donations to the Met Gala, tech's obsession with becoming the curator of taste is symptomatic of a much deeper cynicism toward human life, work, and creativity. And that's what we're going to explore in this video. In the last year or so, I've developed a bit of an obsession with privacy, and honestly, for good reason. There are people out there who will gather whatever information they can find on you to threaten, to stalk, to cross lines that should never be crossed. It's scary, I won't lie, but I'm not gonna stop making videos because I love this too much. What I can do though is make sure I'm taking every possible precaution to protect everything outside of this frame. I mean, after doing a lot of research myself, I realized something pretty concerning. No one's really safe. Our data is constantly being collected, bought, sold, and repackaged by companies you've probably never heard of. Your address, your phone number, even information about your family can just exist online. And that's the part most people don't see. It's not just out there, it's being actively traded, which is exactly why I started looking for ways to take that control back. That's where today's sponsor, Enquiries, comes in. Enquiries is a service that helps remove your personal data from data brokers and people's search sites, basically all those places collecting and selling your information without you even knowing. They reach out on your behalf, request removals, and keep doing it over time because this stuff can pop back up again. And with Enquiries, a custom removal feature, if you find a site with your information on it, just send the link over to Enquiries and they will deal with it for you. So this is how simple it is. Step 1 is setting up the account. Step 2 is to authorize Enquiries to remove your personal data on your behalf. And step 3, you just relax and let them do the hard work. Those data brokers, scammers, they can't harm you if they can't find you. So take your personal data back with Enquiries, use code CAPPELLE, CAPPELLE at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan. That's enquiries.com/CAPPELLE. Thank you Enquiries for sponsoring the video, and now let's go back to it. 1984 won't be like 1984. In January 1984, in what would become an iconic commercial directed by Ridley Scott for Apple, the promise was clear. The technological revolution would be emancipatory, anti-authoritarian, the very opposite of the dystopia imagined by George Orwell.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
This narrative became the founding myth of Silicon Valley. Technology was liberation, driven by creative individuals seemingly positioned outside traditional structures of money and power, wearing flip-flops, grey t-shirts, and living in garages. I mean, look at this 1996 illustration taken from Mac Addict. On the one hand, you have the Windows user, a typical white-collar worker, a bit normie, a bit boring, let's be honest. And on the right, you have the Mac Addict. He's cool, he's casual, you want to be friends with him. Now, this is marketing. It's the myth of the laid-back tech entrepreneur. The reality behind these images is much darker. I want to use this first part to debunk the idea that California, and more specifically Silicon Valley, has always been a progressive stronghold. This simply isn't true. California was for decades a deeply conservative state. From the post-war period until 1992, it voted predominantly Republican and served as a strategic center of the American military-industrial complex. It's in this environment that institutions like California Institute of Technology, Caltech, and Stanford University developed their reputation. And to be honest, these institutions reflected the political and social context in which they were created. They were never merely neutral scientific institutions, they were also sites of ideological production. In the early 20th century, both played a role in legitimizing eugenics and hierarchical conceptions of intelligence. At Stanford, under the presidency of David Starr Jordan, ideas of natural selection and sterilization were explicitly framed as tools for social improvement. Across California, tens of thousands of forced sterilizations were carried out between 1909 and the late 1970s with the support or scientific endorsement of major academic institutions. The work of Alfred Binet on intelligence testing, imported and transformed in the United States, fed into these logics, helping naturalize racial and social hierarchies through the language of science. Later, figures such as William Shockley, pioneer of the transistor and central to Silicon Valley's industrial expansion, extended this legacy, combining technological innovation with openly racialized theories of intelligence and productivity. You see the legacy of this ideology today with the tech elite's obsession with IQ and more recently the promotion of AI, so artificial intelligence. And more recently, the Palantir 22-point manifesto, which states that some cultures have produced vital advances, while others remain dysfunctional and regressive. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Following the Second World War, this ecosystem was massively funded by the federal government through what could be described as military Keynesianism. California became one of the primary subcontractors of the US military, and much of its economic prosperity was built on public money flowing through defense contracts, aerospace, and research in general. Yet this dependency was largely obscured by a media narrative centered on entrepreneurial genius and innovation. It is within this context that Reagan's politics trajectory becomes instrumental. First elected governor of California in 1968 and then president in 1981, he successfully articulated a libertarian hostility to the welfare state with a massive expansion of military and security infrastructures. Drawing on economists such as Lester Thurow at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Reagan promoted the transition from sunset industries to sunrise industries, therefore positioning high technology as the engine of both renewed growth and geopolitical supremacy. So Silicon Valley became the site where two apparently contradictory projects converged: market fundamentalism and national security. While libertarian ideology framed the state as an obstacle to freedom, Silicon Valley's development remained deeply dependent on state funding, including military funding. The myth of the solitary entrepreneur coding the next tech revolution from their garage is nothing more than a myth, but it's through those myths that tech remains culturally relevant. For example, Peter Thiel, like Ronald Reagan before him, regularly invoked Armageddon, the biblical final battle between good and evil preceding the end of the world. Peter Thiel used it to convey civilizational collapse, survivalism, or posthumanism. Reagan, on the other hand, used it in the context of Cold War politics. Actually, 1 year after the Berlin Wall fell, so in 1992, Bill Clinton won California, which marked a major political shift. The state became democratic and remained so for decades. But Clinton did not break with the existing trajectory. He just repackaged it. Under his administration, the internet was deregulated and transformed into a market, while simultaneously being framed as a democratic infrastructure, the information superhighway. This is actually when the archetype of the tech founder fully crystallized. Young, idealistic, motivated by passion and ideas rather than profit. This techno-optimistic consensus extended well into the 2000s and 2010s, particularly under Barack Obama, before being destabilized by revelations of Edward Snowden with WikiLeaks and later the election of Donald Trump and the post-truth era. Only then did mainstream discourse begin seriously interrogating their relationship between technological infrastructures and democratic erosion.
Senator, we run ads.
I see.
Today, as global capitalism faces a renewed crisis of legitimacy, Silicon Valley is once again positioned as the source of a new frontier, this time through artificial intelligence. Its integration within state and military infrastructures continues to deepen, even as it maintains the rhetoric of innovation and liberation. This configuration has led some theorists to describe our current moment as one of techno-feudalism, emphasizing the extraordinary concentration of power in digital platforms, as well as their capacity to govern economic and social life. Yet this framework is contested. The concept of feudalism suggests a return to an earlier mode of social organization, a different reading defended by historians like Sylvie Laurent, who's the big inspiration for this first part. She wrote a book on the Californienne Contre-Revolution, but also philosopher Frédéric Lordon reject this backward-looking framework. They say that what we are witnessing is not a departure from capitalism, but its mutation and intensification, an authoritarian, militarized form of capitalism that finances and instrumentalizes technological development for broader political and economic ends. From this perspective, Silicon Valley is not an autonomous feudal center, but a strategic node within a larger system. This is not rupture, but progression. Capitalism adapting to crises by tightening its alliance with technology and defense as it pushes increasingly apocalyptic imaginaries. For the new generation of AI executives, taste has become a magic word. OpenAI co-founder Greg Brockman recently declared that, quote, taste is the new core skill. The phrase appears everywhere now, in startup manifestos, design discourse, venture capital podcasts, and dinner parties populated by young workers from OpenAI, Anthropic, or Y Combinator. What is striking is not simply that Silicon Valley has discovered aesthetics, but that it has done so precisely at the moment when it has lost the ability to sell a convincing collective future. The old mythology of Silicon Valley promised abundance for everyone: connection, democratization, meritocracy. Tech once justified itself through visions of universal emancipation, but today those visions are kind of lost, or they're not convincing enough. With platform monopolies, mass surveillance, gig work precarity, and the endless production of AI slop, that utopian horizon has collapsed. The industry no longer speaks convincingly about building a better society. Instead, it speaks about taste. If everyone can generate infinite images or texts, then value no longer appears to reside in production itself. It resides in choosing, in curating, in saying this matters and this doesn't. This is why taste has become so precious. AI enthusiast Steve Dinner summarized the new ideology as follows, quote, companies will spend less budget on engineering and more on marketing, less on building and more on positioning. When everyone can execute, the competitive advantage moves to distribution and differentiation. Now, sociologically, taste has always functioned this way. Long before Silicon Valley rediscovered it, philosophers and sociologists understood taste not as a mysterious personal gift, but as a learned social mechanism. In 1757, David Hume argued that taste has delicacy. This means that trained individuals perceive distinctions invisible to others, much like an experienced wine taster can detect things that an amateur wouldn't. Taste for Hume was not innate superiority, but cultivated perception. Now, Edmund Burke, on the other hand, argued that taste emerges through exposure. Your preferences are formed by what you repeatedly encounter. Taste is not essence, it's about experience. And then Immanuel Kant identified the contradiction at the center of aesthetic judgment. When we say something is beautiful, we experience it as personal while speaking of it as if it was universal. We don't say, I like this, we say, this is good. Taste transforms subjective feelings into implicit authority. But it was Pierre Bourdieu who revealed the real social function of taste. In Distinction, in 1979, Bourdieu showed that taste is fundamentally a system of classification. Preferences signal class position, education, and social belonging. Taste differentiates groups from one another while making those differences appear natural. You see, what people call good taste is often simply the aesthetic style associated with dominant social groups. This is crucial for understanding Silicon Valley's obsession with taste today. Taste is not just about aesthetics, it is about distinction. The tech elite increasingly define themselves not through technical competence, which AI threatens to universalize, place, but through supposedly refined judgment. They are trying to separate themselves from the masses of AI users producing generic content. You see, if AI democratizes production, elites retreat into curation. This is the status anxiety we were talking about. Look at this picture there. This is a dinner called In Pursuit of Taste. It's a dinner series organized by young AI workers in San Francisco. Guests working for OpenAI or Anthropic gathered around scallops, edible flowers, custom napkins. The pictures coming out of the dinner have that retro vibe to them. One organizer explained that, quote, the biggest thing with taste at a high level is figuring out how to stay differentiated. This explains why Silicon Valley suddenly sees taste as a trainable discipline. Anyone can develop it. Brand designer Jamie Gannon claimed that, quote, if you watch every Wes Anderson movie, spend an hour a day on Pinterest and work on your personal style, in a year you will come out with better taste. Taste becomes a productivity hack, another optimization problem. But not everyone agree about personal style though. Tech investors and writer Paul Graham tweeted this picture of Einstein with the following caption, quote, taste in clothing isn't important, and the people who think well should dress for comfort. So it's not really about knowing what clothes look good, but knowing what ideas, products, startups will become valuable. It's a core skill the tech elite needs to develop to stay afloat in the sea of slop they have enabled. That's how they keep monopoly, that's how they keep extracting value. Cultural capital turns into economic capital. And this is where this essay Against Taste by Will Manidis comes in. It's a very well written piece. I think it got a little bit viral, and I think it glamorizes a little bit patronage, but regardless, there are some great points in there, so I want to share some bits with you. The essay argues that contemporary taste discourse mistakes consumption for creation. Taste, it says, is what you call the patron's function after you have removed the patron from the process of making. Now let me explain what he means by it. In earlier historical periods, patrons funded cathedral and artistic schools oriented toward collective or transcendent purposes, whether it was God or any other ideal. You see, there was friction between patron and maker, a shared investment in building something beyond immediate consumption. Patrons trusted artists to make something good enough and were open to be surprised in the process. Today, by contrast, the collector replaces the patron. The curator replaces the maker. Taste operates retrospectively, selecting from an archive of already existing possibilities. It does not generate the genuinely new. Now, I'm not an artist myself, I'm more of a writer, researcher, and I can say that we observe the same phenomenon in academia. Increasingly, researchers are expected to make their research impact-driven, which means that to get grant money, they have to show how their research will have direct impact on society. And while this may sound logical to you, the reality is that this limits the potential of research by containing it to expected outcomes. You see, the greatest discoveries, from the invention of penicillin to the delicious tarte tatin, those things were born out of mistakes. They were discovered by people who had enough resources to faff around and make mistakes. This is how we grow as a people, as a civilization, by making mistakes. I'm not the only one saying it. Even Stephen Bartlett wrote about it in his Diary of CEO, to the point where it becomes caricatural. You know, it's like, you have to fail again and again. But anyway, that's not what the taste-obsessed tech leaders preach. The dream of the AI elite is that the role of curator becomes the highest human function. The machine generates, and then the human exercises taste. And Manidis' essay points out the impoverishment hidden within this model. Taste can only recognize what already resembles existing categories of value. It cannot truly create rupture. It cannot produce the thing with no precedent in the archive. Even when the remix is beautiful, it remains backward-looking. In fact, don't look further than the recent Met Gala to see a clear example of this. We had a lot of beautiful remixes, for sure, and we also had less successful remixes, like Lauren Sanchez's dress, for example. This very woman, who's just as eager to be a hit girl as Emily in The Devil Wears Prada 2, was wearing a dress inspired by John Singer Sargent's Madame X. As I said, many other celebrities had nostalgic looks, some were great, some less great, I'm not here to judge. But you see, this obsession with nostalgia, that makes taste discourse feel haunted. Yeah, haunted. Why? Because it keeps repeating itself. It's what philosopher Max Fisher called hauntology. Culture, trapped within repetitions of past forms, becomes the dominant condition of AI capitalism. And beneath all this lies a deeper political transformation. The tech elite no longer imagine themselves as builders of collective futures. The 1984 won't be like 1984 tech optimism is over. Unlike patrons who helped build cathedrals toward futures they would never live to see, the AI elite's version of taste is intensely self-referential. What they call taste is often simply consensus among elites trained within the same networks and aesthetic codes. AI can generate endless possibilities, but the people selecting among them remain trapped inside the same bubble. Taste, far from asserting human creativity against automation, risks becoming the final ideology of a culture that no longer believes in making anything genuinely new. And let's be honest here, taste may be the new core skill in the tech venture capitalism world, but taste is not relevant to most jobs. So if the world gets divided between machine creation and those who can curate, those who have taste, what happens to the rest of us? Here is Palantir's official merch website. You've got the blue and black chalk coats, a book titled Mobilize, How to Reboot the American Industrial Base and Stop World War III, and you also have a US flag patch and some caps as well. It's giving industrialism, it's giving US baby. After decades of pretending to be a progressive force, Silicon Valley tech giants are going mask off, revealing how interconnected they are with an authoritarian government and its military operations. Palantir's merch, especially the blue worker jacket, which, as internet fashion historian Derek Guy rightly pointed out, is not even American style, but French style. If you go in the 10th or 11th arrondissement in Paris, you'll see a bunch of those in bobo shops sold for hundreds of years, but anyway, I digress. The jacket was meant to represent a specific era of Western history, the Industrial Revolution and the economic boom it generated. What Palantir is saying with this collection and that book is that they are the new workforce ensuring America's economic prosperity. Their coders, computer scientists, and engineers are the new blue-collar workers. Yeah, I can't take it seriously either, but there is something serious about it. When tech giants are coming up with blue-collared inspired collections and takes like taste is the new core skill, what they are saying to you is that you're replaceable and you'll be replaced. Blue-collar jobs were dismantled in part because of globalization, facilitated by the tech boom in the 2000s. And we know AI is in the process of dismantling many of the jobs we were told would shape the new technological economy. You are the new proletariat by the means of exploitation, my friends, in the form of a $239 chore coat. If you didn't go to school, or you went to a school that's not that great, or you went to Harvard or Princeton or Yale, once you come to Palantir, you're a Palantirian. No one cares about the other stuff. That's a quote from Palantir CEO Alex Karp. He also added, quote, "We are making a new credential, independent of class and background at Palantir." Their book, Mobilize, is partly a critique of US defense bureaucracy, partly a manifesto for AI-enabled manufacturing and defense, and partly a call for a new alliance between engineers, startups, the military. The themes of industrialism, decay, empire, and war serve to create the right amount of anxiety to fearmonger us into accepting a Palantirian reality. But the real reality is quite different. Even if AI could be employed in ways that would boost employment in manufacturing and infrastructure building, major multinationals will find much quicker paths to making money by using the technology to lay off office workers while they automate as much of their operations as possible. Now, we're reaching the end of the video and I don't want to sound alarmist. You know, things are pretty bad, I agree. But as we said in the first part, hyper-focusing on tech power is giving tech giants too much credit. Those guys need government contracts. They need government bailouts.
The federal government is kind of the insurer of last resort.
They need low taxation. They need users like you and me. They need competent engineers. These are all levers that we can use to curb their power and discipline them a bit, to put it bluntly. I mean, they want us to become the new proletariat, but let's flip the narrative around and unite against them and the government forces that enable them all around the world. Thank you so much for watching. Before I leave, I would like to say a big thank you to Enquiries for sponsoring the video. Take your personal data back with Enquiries. You can use my code CAPPELLE, CAPPELLE, at the link below and get 60% off your annual plan. The link is in the description box. So we talked about Patreons during this video, and I would like to say a big thank you to my Patreons. With a special thank to top tier Patreons. I'm literally a fork. Hamed, Shunak, Sibev, Jose, Nofol Shemari, Fred, Hongxing Wang, Paul-Louis Agenot, Patrick Button, Jeff Lee, Taya Matin, Nick, Brandon, James Sedo, Ojuel, Patrick Riley, Boris, Ria, Koriji, Tristan, Christopher, Jan, Donáth, Alex, Manuel, Christopher France, and Perry. And thank you to the other ones who prefer to stay anonymous. Again, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, to subscribe, to hype the video if you want to give that extra boost. And I'll see you very, very soon. Salut!